And we are live. So hi, everyone. Welcome to another virtual series hosted by PALCUS. My name is Angela Simoes. And today we're talking about a topic that I think a lot of people are curious about, and we've covered actually numerous times in the past. We have Joshua Benavente here, who is going to be talking about Portugal as the other golden coast. And so if you're thinking about moving, and that includes, buying a property, building a property, renovating a property, anything like that, or maybe you're just looking at investing at an Airbnb. This is the session that you want to listen to. We want to thank Joshua for sponsoring this event, and it actually is going to be the first in a few. It's a series that Joshua is going to be sponsoring, talking about this very topic. So if we don't get to your question today, be sure to sign up for our newsletter so that you can be notified about future sessions. And we want this to be interactive. So if you have questions and you're watching us on Zoom, please pop your questions into the chat. If you are watching live on Facebook, pop your questions into the chat stream below. We will monitor that and answer your questions live. We will get to as many questions as we can. But of course, if you are watching this after the fact and you have questions, Joshua is going to give you his contact information so you can reach out to him directly, or you can reach out to PALCUS and we will and we'll forward your question to Joshua. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Joshua Benavente. Thanks, Joshua, for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Angela. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to get started really quick here. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start off with a bang, and then I will introduce myself better, and then we'll go from there. So Angela, can you just let me know if you can see my screen?
I can. It looks great.
All right, here we go. So I'm going to start off with a quick video. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear volume. All right. So,
wow, that was great. Very well done.
Not my video, but this is made for municipality of Lisbon and tourism of Portugal. But I thought it was amazing, so I wanted to start off with a bang. Whoops. Let me just get to the next slide. Okay, so my name is Joshua Benavente, and first and foremost, I am a licensed realtor in the state of Arizona. I'll probably be getting my license in California too, but for now, I'm here in Arizona, Scottsdale to be specific. I work with a company called Engel and Volkers. We're based out of Germany, but international real estate. Technically, my label is Global Real Estate Advisor. I'm also a certified international property specialist through the National Association of Realtors, which is connected to the Portuguese International Realty Association. And my whole purpose with this webinar is just to basically re-envision what Portugal means for the diaspora. Because I think a lot of us that grew up in the Portuguese communities abroad kind of have a vision of Portugal as a place you go on for summer vacation. It's a place you go to eat and drink and party and have a good time, hang out with your grandparents, your cousins, and your family. But I want to present this vision of Portugal that the rest of the world sees Portugal as to the community, and present opportunities that the Portuguese government is providing, incentivizations for people that want to return to Portugal, invest, are curious about it in any way. And this is of great advantage to the Portuguese diaspora, because being a Portuguese descendancy, we have the right to Portuguese citizenship. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of what's going on in Portugal, demographics, et cetera, et cetera. This is a recent article that came out through the Los Angeles magazine that really kind of, if Portugal wasn't already on the map, this put it on the map. The new California dream is in Portugal. That's why I titled this The Other Golden Coast. So here are some key words that I think really encapsulate what the new Portugal is. Art, tech hubs, quality of life, diversity, old meeting new, circular economy, farm to table, entrepreneurship, startups, lifestyle, and innovation. So the demographics of Portugal, a brief overview. Essentially, we have a dwindling and aging population, an increasingly educated workforce, movement from the interior of the country to urban centers, and a very multicultural, diverse population. So in this slide, there are just two things that I want to focus on. For every 100 young people, jovens, there are 165 idosos, elderly. So about a fifth of the Portuguese population is actually elderly, which is pretty significant. Also, we see that there's an increasing amount of immigration into the country. In 2020, there were 662,000 immigrants, resident immigrants in the country. A lot of those are coming from Brazil, but also the UK, Cape Verde, Eastern Europe, like Romania, Ukraine, China as well, France, a lot from the Portuguese colonies, but also, like I said, Eastern Europe, South Asia. So like I said, a lot of the Portuguese population, about 1/5, are elderly, and most of them are present in the interior of the country, which is where we see a dwindling population. Also, fertility rate in Portugal is quite low. It's almost at a record low. About 1.4 is the current rate. Here are just some maps. I won't go into too much depth here, but you see on the right-hand side, the darker red is where there's a higher concentration of population. So we see this migration. In the middle map here, you see the darker the blue the regions are, that is where people are migrating to. So you kind of see this emptying out of the interior of the country into the coastal urban centers such as Lisbon, Porto, Coimbra, Braga. Also Funchal on the island of Madeira is one of the largest populated cities or metropolitan areas in Portugal. Six percent of the Portuguese population is foreign. And again, like I said before, 1/5 of the population are considered to be elderly. And we see some issues with the youth in Portugal. About 45% still live with their parents between the ages of 25 to 34. I have about a 7% unemployment rate and a pretty low minimum salary. On top of this, about 25% of Portuguese nationals actually live outside of the country. So there are some problems there that need to be addressed. And I think the Portuguese government realizes this. And for that reason, there are a number of programs, which we're going to talk about later, that the Portuguese government is offering, especially to the diaspora communities. So just to encapsulate that information about demographics, we've got about a 22% of the population that is considered elderly, especially in the interior of the country, which is creating an issue of low population density in the interior. But there is an increasingly educated population. 21.2% have some form of graduate degree. There's a low fertility rate and increasing migration and foreign residency of about 6% right now. But you pile on top of that, all of the digital nomads and the tourists and people that don't have residency but have a visa. And there's quite a bit of foreigners in Portugal right now. And then also you have a low minimum salary. So it incentivizes foreign investment in the country because Portugal is a very affordable place to be to do business for the time being. If you're bringing money from the UK, from France, from the United States, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not so great for a lot of the native Portuguese. However, there are still a lot of opportunities available. Here's another little video. We're going to talk about what's going on in Portugal in terms of the tech world, in terms of startups, and there's a lot of really cool things going on. So here we go. So that video was about a place called the Hub Criativo do Beato, which is a project underneath the Startup Lisboa initiative. And on the left-hand corner, you can see here a little bit of a map of that project. It's this huge kind of industrial section in Beato, which is a little bit up the Tejo from Lisbon, maybe 25 minutes-ish. And they're turning that into an incubator, into a startup hub. And they really want to incentivize creatives, whether it be in the field of, revitalizing the restaurant industry or in tech, in crypto, in any kind of startup. They really want to bring creative minds together and create sort of like a think tank there. So that's underneath the Startup Lisboa initiative. And there's a lot of projects underneath that umbrella to incentivize investment, foreign investment, but also domestic investment. They really want to foster this sort of, I don't know, they want to make Portugal kind of like a green Switzerland. They want to put it on the map as like as a Silicon Valley kind of vibe. So yeah.
I was just going to say, when the startup tech scene really took off in Portugal, they were starting to call it, the Silicon Valley of Europe. And so, yeah, it's been growing and growing for, I would say, the past, 5 to 10 years. It's been really great. And I'm glad you have a Web Summit slide here, because that's a fantastic event. I haven't been yet, but I plan on going at some point.
Yeah, the Web Summit, actually, it just finished, I think maybe like 2 weeks ago. I feel like it was really recent. But a fantastic event. It brings people from all over the world to Lisbon. Just some, kind of photos here from that event. There's a lot of really cool things going on in Lisbon. I was there for 8 months this year. I met a ton of people, and they're doing some really cool things. Anything from like, taking restaurant compost and turning it into substrate for like mushroom farming in the city. And like growing gourmet mushrooms to then, bring back to the restaurants. Mm-hmm. Just all kinds of cool stuff.
I have to say, I'm really happy to see the quality of these videos coming out of, ESEP and some of the other agencies, and especially Startup Lisboa, because for so long, when you saw a video promoting Portugal as a destination for business, it was all about the landscapes and the quality of life. And it's like, yes, that's a huge part of it, but there's so many other amazing things happening in Portugal that have been highlighted here, right? The technology, the talent, the creativity, the opportunity, whether it's, tourism business. I mean, there's just so much, it's so diverse and so rich that some of those older videos really missed that. So I'm glad to see the quality of these videos. And we're getting a couple of comments here about the music. So whoever made the videos, good choice on the music.
Okay, good. So I just pulled some quotes from some articles about the tech scene in Lisbon right now, the startup scene rather. I'll just read them off to you. Increasing numbers of Lisbon's rundown buildings are being transformed by techpreneurs and public funding into hubs and working spaces for digital technology related businesses. There are now more than 50 co-working spaces in the city, according to Made of Lisboa, an entrepreneur community. And with its wealth of tech talent, both local and from overseas, and support from the public and private sectors in the form of tax incentives, grants and initiatives, the city is on course to become a leading tech hub in Europe, and along with tourism, is set to underpin growth in the property market, according to et cetera, my screen cut off the rest. But anyways, we see that there's a huge interest globally in Portugal, and the government realizes that, and they're capitalizing upon Portugal being a desirable location because of its climate, its, as you said, Angela, quality of life, cost of living. And one way, and we'll see how this kind of folds into how diaspora members can take advantage of certain programs the Portuguese government's offering. But they're talking here about how Lisbon's rundown buildings are being transformed into workspaces. They're being repurposed. And that's one of the issues that Portugal faces right now. And one of the huge drives behind all of this is they want to rehabilitate the country, the infrastructure of the country. In Lisbon alone, you have over 3,000 buildings that are considered derelict. And and the ownership of the building is very obscure. There's not necessarily a central registry or public access to see, okay, well, who owns this building? How can we redevelop it? How can we repurpose it, et cetera, et cetera? So there's a housing crisis in Lisbon, accessible housing. And this is being done to a certain degree, but I think that we can do a lot more. There's a lot more opportunity there. So, we have articles like this coming out. San Francisco startup is looking to Portugal for crypto talent. Portugal startup scene rises, Portugal gears up to become a tech tiger, things like that. And in 2020, we saw a huge increase in American investment in Portugal. As far as crypto and blockchain is concerned, because I've gotten this question a lot recently, crypto earnings are technically tax-free in Portugal. However, if trading is your main source of income, i.e. you're a professional trader, then that income is not tax-free because it's considered your main source of income. So Portuguese government would want to tax that. But we do see things like, and just forget everything on the left-hand side. I can encapsulate that much more succinctly in what I just said. But we see things like the first villas being paid for in cryptocurrency in Portugal. This came out 1st of November. So crypto is starting to make its appearance on the scene in Portugal in a more salient way. We do see a lot of investment coming from China. Brazil obviously has this long-term relationship with Brazil, and there are a lot of Portuguese that went to Brazil at a certain point in history, and now they have the opportunity to return. But in terms of taking advantage of things like the golden visa, which Portuguese government offers to anybody willing to invest anywhere from 280 to 350,000 euros. Now it's going to change to 350 to 500,000 euros. That turns into a EU citizenship after 5 or 6 years. For the most part, we saw a huge interest in Chinese investors, followed by Brazil. The United States is starting to come up. In 2020, we saw a huge increase. South Africa, Turkey, Vietnam, Russia, India, Iran. So there are a lot of foreign interests in Portugal, and a lot of this comes from the purchase of properties. So I keep my finger on the pulse there, and we do see pretty frequently these big funds coming in and purchasing buildings in Lisbon and the surrounding areas and in Porto. So a lot of development is going on, but it's coming from areas that don't necessarily have any direct connection to Portugal. We see things like this. I know Angela, Roberto Lino, and this is his project, Azores X. So he's doing some incredible things on the island of Pico in the Azores. All around the island, he has little creative think tank hubs, tech hubs popping up. He's doing, some real estate development. He's working with the government of the Azores to rebrand, which I think is really awesome. So things like this, as far out as the islands are taking place, you have things like this on Pico as well. The Azores Wine Company's beautiful new building, gorgeous architecture, producing wine that's distributed across the world.
That's beautiful. We do have a question that just came in. I think it's related to what you're talking about. So before we move on, a question comes from Deborah. How does the government and community welcome foreign investors, especially if they're buying up bulks of real estate? And that's sort of related to a question I had when I saw your slide, is that when you see these, Chinese, Brazilian, and some of these other ethnicities, so are we seeing an increase in populations of those ethnicities in Portugal as well? Or does that mean they're just buying property and then, owning it and selling it to locals?
Well, I would say both.
Okay.
And were you to just go and walk the streets of Lisbon, you would see, there is a pretty significant concentration of, people from India, Bangladesh, China. A lot of people from the former Portuguese colonies. You have a lot of Africans, a lot of Brazilians, but also, you see, for example, when I was in Portugal, I went to Évora, and I was walking around, the historic center of Évora, and all of the shops that sell, souvenirs from the region, they were all owned or at least run by Chinese people. And
Okay.
I thought, that's interesting, but and technically against the entire population of the country, it's not very large. But when these huge funds come in, or private investors, and they start buying up buildings and property, obviously that's going to be followed by some migration of those ethnicities. So go ahead.
We have a follow-up question to that. So given that, how does it affect the stability of the culture and keeping it intact? And this is actually something that a lot of Portuguese Americans here talk about, which is, and including my husband, because he keeps telling me, stop sharing articles about Portugal. That, how do we, and is the government doing anything about this to maintain the quaintness and the Portuguese culture, right? So it's not diluted by, other groups coming in. And I will just say, whenever I see a new American fast food restaurant pop up in the most unlikely of places, it's like, oh my God, why did that happen? Like, it's just, to me, that's not progress. To me, that's actually a detriment to the Portuguese culture and the country in general. So if there's one message, Portuguese government, please stop allowing American fast food in Portugal. It's not helping anybody. But what's your take on all that? How it affects the culture and stability?
Well, that's the spirit of why I'm doing this, honestly. I'm providing information. I'm not really making any money off of doing this. Obviously, I work in the field of real estate, and I have partners in Portugal that I work with to help people that want to transition to invest or to be there. But really, having grown up in the Portuguese community abroad, and then having spent time in Portugal, I just see a lot of opportunity, and I see a lot of opportunity for the diaspora to offset that. One of the issues that Portugal faces is people from different countries with an entrepreneurial mindset see potential in Portugal, and so they come in, and Portugal has thrived. We've seen this, it's put itself on the map over the past 10 or so years because of all of the tourism. It's invested in tourism, and it's allowed foreign investment in the country. But I see this also as a problem. And I think that the Portuguese diaspora abroad, say, for example, in the United States, we have a more of an individualistic, entrepreneurial kind of spirit here in the United States. And I think that we're the young Portuguese Americans with new ideas, with creative projects, were to realize the potential that exists in Portugal. And because I think a lot of us are disillusioned with many aspects of our culture and our society, and we want a different lifestyle. I think that's why people go to Portugal to begin with, is because they see that there's a good quality of life there. So for me, doing this and providing this information to the diaspora community is a way of saying, like, hey, we can offset this by kind of repatriating ourselves, by investing in our roots. And I think the Portuguese government realizes this as well, because that's why they're changing the Golden Visa program. They're making it more expensive to get a golden visa. And also in 2020, you're not going to be able to get a golden visa by purchasing property in urban centers anymore. Like,
Right,
you know,
it's
the
changing.
center of Lisbon, the center of Porto,
Right.
it's got to be in, you know, outside. And I think technically it's urban rehabilitation zones, which are
Right.
set by each municipality. So
Yeah, so I think you bring up a great point, which is when you said that the diaspora has an opportunity to counterbalance the foreign investment that's happening in Portugal, right? And it reminds me of a saying that my friend Denise Borges says often when he comes across somebody that says, "Oh, I'm very proud to be Portuguese," and he says, "That's great. What are you going to do about it?" Right? And it's such a great thing to point out to people that, you know, yes, it is great to be Portuguese. And if you want it to continue, and if you want to continue seeing, you know, whether it's things here in our community or, you know, you want to keep Portugal as Portuguese as possible, then we kind of all have a responsibility to do something about that, right? And so if folks from other countries are seeing the opportunity there, why can't we see that, right? And why can't we make the investment? Now, we're not saying to go sink $2 million into a business, but, you know, does it mean buying a property? Does it mean just visiting more often? Does it mean, you know, just having those kinds of connections? So just to get people thinking about what does it mean to be more connected, and what does it mean to really maintain the culture and the integrity of you know, of the culture. We have some questions coming in from Facebook. And I think you're going to address this in a bit, but from Deborah, as a Luso-American who's interested in investing in Portugal, is there support out there to navigate the process? So yes, we are going to be addressing
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
And then from Maria, the same in Açores that I believe will be the new Florida for retirement, like me and my husband, we are very happy. So I guess Maria Felipe has retired in the Azores, and she is very happy. So parabéns, Maria.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well done.
I'm running right behind you one day soon. Yeah, we'll address those things later on. And I just want to, you know, cap that point by saying, you know, it's almost a no-brainer for the Portuguese descendants, because you have the right, you know, up until I think until terceiro grau, until the third degree,
generation,
third generation, you have a right to Portuguese citizenship. Okay. You have right to Portuguese citizenship. Oftentimes, a lot of our families own property in Portugal that's just, you know, kind of sitting there, not doing anything, right? Just gathering dust. And on top of that, there's all these programs that we're going to talk about later that the Portuguese government's offering. So it's like, my gosh, you know, like, why wouldn't you take advantage of all these opportunities that are out there? You know, land is one of there's other opportunities, but land in itself is the most valuable thing that you can possess, pretty much, other than your health and, you know, and good air and good water and everything like that. You know, that's true wealth, is having land. So anyways, these are some pictures that I pulled from some of the profiles I follow on Instagram, and it shows, you know, where people have little country homes and they rent them out, you know, for a season, or you could, you know, the price, for example, here, this one, the third one from the left, Casa do Limão in Mortágua, Viseu, 185,000 euros for, it's like a little villa with a pool and everything, and it's fantastic, you know. Just to give you an idea, on the right-hand side, you have a picture this is from Pico, actually. Beautifully architecturally designed, very designed to be, you know, congruent with the natural environment that surrounds it. So there are things like this going on. You know, you saw the Azores Wine Company building as well. Like, it's a very similar design. There's some really cool things happening. A lot of visionary architects and developers in Portugal. So then another thing that's happening, what we've seen over the course of the pandemic, is something called the Great Resignation. You know, a record amount of Americans are giving up their citizenship or quitting their jobs, and they're talking about going to places like Portugal, right? So they're looking for these sorts of opportunities, and Portugal is happy to receive them because it brings, you know, it brings capital into the country. In Madeira, they have a digital nomads village, and I just saw they surpassed their record number of occupants in the village in Ponta do Sol in Madeira. There's like over 4,000 digital nomads that are living there. Yeah, it's crazy. So we're seeing that this is the wave, you know, this is the time to start making moves if you've been thinking about this, if you're interested in it, because other people are doing it. And if we don't take advantage of it, then, you know, there's going to be less and less opportunity. I mean, Portugal is very sparsely populated overall, but still, I think that it's an opportune time for the diaspora to move. So here are some of the tools that I sort of talked about, and we'll go into greater depth with. You have Startup Lisboa, which there's a lot of information here, but since 2012, they've received over 4,500 applications. There are 400 supported startups, entrepreneurs from over 40 countries, 3,500 jobs created, 150 million euros invested or investment raised by startups. They've rehabilitated historic buildings. They have residencies for entrepreneurs. They have all different kinds of incubation spaces for any kind of a startup that you could imagine. They also have visas. Go ahead.
So this would be for somebody here in the United States thinking, it'd be really cool to start a restaurant, a little B&B. I have a tech idea. I have a whatever. If you have an idea for a business and you think that Portugal might be a place to start that business, and you just think, okay, but how do I do that? So this program from Startup Lisboa is one example that you can take advantage of. Just wanted to put context around it, right? Like,
yes,
who are we
thank
talking
you.
to? Yeah,
exactly. And not only for businesses that are going to be like, based and focused on a Portuguese market, but a global market. There are all kinds of companies that have their global headquarters in Portugal, in Lisbon specifically, or Porto. So this is a great opportunity. They offer all kinds of different visas, that even if you don't have your Portuguese citizenship or your right to it, they have startup visas, tech visas, et cetera, et cetera. They have certain funds that will match funding that you bring into the country, things like that. So I can send out links to all of this stuff later on if anybody's interested, give you a little bit more information. Now, this program is kind of what I really want to focus on. This is PNAID, which is the Programa Nacional de Apoio ao Investimento da Diaspora, National Assistance Program for Investment of the Diaspora. So this is specifically aimed at Luso descendants. Let's see. So the two main points of this: number one, they want to focus on the return and or investment of the diaspora in Portugal. And number two, I should say two, it says three there, the promotion of Portuguese exports and investment abroad through the diaspora. Okay, so they want to get Portuguese people or Portuguese descendancy interested in investing in Portugal or returning to Portugal. They want, especially when it comes to investment in the interior of the country. So, it could be anything from, like we talked about just previously in the last slide, startups, tech startups, or, food and hospitality startups, to agricultural business. I know we have a lot of Portuguese in the Central Valley of California that are a huge agro. That's a huge agro community. And, there's a lot of great opportunity in Portugal, and they need it. Also internationalization. So this goes two ways. So it's to bring people into the country, but then also to take Portuguese products out and get them a greater exposure on the global scale. So we see on the top right-hand corner here, there's a chart. The vast majority of people that have taken advantage of the PNAID program are Portuguese, born in Portugal, live in Portugal. And I think a huge part of that is because the knowledge of this program is not widely dispersed, and it's not made available in English, hardly at all. So you have 20% that have taken advantage of the program that were born in the estrangeiro, outside of Portugal, but they have Portuguese nationality, and only 3% that have that don't have Portuguese nationality but have a right to it. So that would be somebody like me. I'm second generation Portuguese, and I have the right, I'm in the process of getting my Portuguese citizenship, but I don't have it, but still I could take advantage of this program. So a brief overview of some of the benefits of this. They create financial incentives for investment of the diaspora. They support systems for the creation of cooperative networks and collaborative processes, programs for investment in the interior of the country, the Regressar program, which I'll talk about later. They have a special contingency, which is 7% of the quota of national competition for higher education. So they reserve 7% of all spaces in higher education institutions for diaspora members if they want to pursue higher education in Portugal. Go ahead.
I just say that is one of the key data points that I if I could shout it from the rooftops and have every Portuguese American hear it, because with the cost of education here in the United States, no matter really what state you're in, it's just it's already unattainable in many regards, and it's just going to continue to get worse. So yes, education in Portugal is certainly an incentive.
Exactly. And if you could, I mean, and there are all kinds of programs that offer scholarships or grants. And on top of that, I mean, education in Europe is nothing like it is over here. It's very affordable. So furthermore, they have incentivization for rehabilitation in the interior of the country, facilitation of access to land and promotion of investment in agriculture, promotion and qualification of investment in tourism, incentives for investment in the creation of accessible housing, financial instruments for the rehabilitation of buildings and rentals. So there's a ton of opportunity in this program. And basically what the PNID program is, it takes all of these different Portuguese cabinets or organizations from the government, and it kind of ties them together and streamlines the process. So you can sign up as an investor of the diaspora, and you'll have a point of contact in this particular department of the government, and they will help you streamline whatever it is that you want to do in Portugal. And they actually have well, I mean, we all know how it is with the embassies and the consulates. So I think it's changing. I think in San Francisco, they've got some new management over there, and things are improving, but you actually can take advantage of this program through the consulates as well. So they're supposed to have a special like balcão, like a portal or a desk through which you can, engage in this. On the lower right-hand corner, you can't really see it very well, and the map is actually not well made, but this is from the PNID program itself. The vast majority of people that take advantage of this program are from South Africa or Germany, Angola, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, France, Peru, United Kingdom, Switzerland. Not very many from the United States.
Yeah, it's a long list.
But not very many from the United States.
Yeah, and I think your point about the information not being provided in English is just a constant problem. And Portuguese government, please get it. We've asked them like a million times to publish a lot of this information, not just for this program, but so many other programs. You have to publish it in English if you want the diaspora here to participate. I just wanted to give one comment. We're getting a lot of questions about where can we find the links to this? Where can I watch it later? It will be available on the PALCUS Facebook page as well as our YouTube. But the best thing is to sign up for the PALCUS newsletter. Very easy to do, and it's free, no membership required. www.palcus.org. You sign up for that, and then we will be publishing. If you missed it, here are the links, and here's the PowerPoint to download and all that kind of great stuff. So that's the best way to stay up to date with where the links and recordings are going to be. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, I'm gonna put together a Word document with just kind of all of this streamlined, all the links, bullet points, information takeaways, so you can actually go and dive into this yourself. Like you said, Angela, a lot of this is not available in English. So over while I was in Portugal and over the past few months, I've just been really digging deep and translating all this and kind of streamlining it so to make it presentable to, and I'm still working on it. This is I think by sharing and by teaching, we learn better ourselves. So by sharing this with you guys, I'm, better digesting this information myself because it's a lot. This is Berta Nunes, and she's in charge of this program. She's in charge of the cabinet for the diaspora, for the communities abroad. This basically just summarizes everything that I just said. Here you'll see online service in Portuguese consulates for startups, cost reductions and streamlined bureaucracy. I think that's huge. We know how bureaucratic the things in Portugal can be. So like I said, this kind of brings all those different diverse programs and departments together and tries to streamline it. And it's as easy as going to their website and putting in your information, signing up as an investor of the diaspora, and then somebody from the government will contact you and you go from there. These are slides from one of their presentations, which basically say the exact same thing, so I'll just skip that. This is another program that Portuguese Americans or Portuguese abroad can take advantage of, but also anybody can take advantage of. So this is not just for diaspora. This is IFRU 2020, a financial instrument for the urban rehabilitation and revitalization. So this kind of ties into a number of the other programs, but basically the interior of the country is deteriorating. and they need people to come in with money to rehabilitate it. So this is a fund of funds, and I'll play this little video so this actually explains it a lot better than I could. So here we go.
IFRU 2020 is a unique financing opportunity to help current or future investors of properties 30 years old and over to rehabilitate their buildings with sustainability. What is IFRU 2020? A financing instrument for urban rehabilitation and revitalization. It is the most important incentive program for urban rehabilitation ever implemented in Portugal. It mobilizes a budget of 1.4 billion euros dedicated to the comprehensive rehabilitation of buildings, generating an investment of 2 billion euros. Many projects have already been financed by IFRU 2020 throughout the country. To promote creativity is an essential aspect of our work. The creativity of our teams and the construction of knowledge. To bring our teams into the cities where they can enjoy everything a city has to offer. And build an environment where they can feel good. A habitat with light, color, energy, history, emotion and soul is essential. There is a great desire to revitalize the interior of the country. For sure, this will be a catalyst for other investments, other activities and more transformation of our city. IFRU 2020 offers the best conditions to carry out your project.
So listen to this.
Maturities of up to 20 years. Grace periods along the investment periods of up to 4 years. Interest rates well below market rates. No restrictions on a range of entities eligible for funding. No restrictions on the use of buildings. No predefined application deadlines. The application procedure is simple. There is an IFRU 2020 contact person in each town hall who can issue the required official documents to assist you in the procedures and licensing procedure. A qualified expert will carry out an energy certification in order to improve the energy efficiency of the building to be rehabilitated. The request for financing is submitted to the nearest branch of any of the selected banks. If you have insufficient guarantee for the loan, IFRU 2020 may provide for this guarantee through the Mutual Guarantee Scheme. By supporting this investment in the urban rehabilitation, we generate more housing, more jobs and more energy efficiency, promoting an inclusive and sustainable growth and the creation of smart cities. Together, we are creating cities with future. IFRU 2020 is a program co-financed by the European Funds of Portugal 2020, the European Investment Bank, and the Council of Europe Development Bank. IFRU 2020, Cities with Future.
Okay.
I've never heard about that I've never heard about that program. That's amazing.
Yes. So, I mean, did you guys hear that? Okay. They will offer you a loan. Okay. They have 1.5 billion euros to distribute, and they're getting a new tranche of funding soon. This one is it's called IFRU 2020, but it's going to continue until 2023, and then they're getting more funding, okay? There are no restrictions on who can apply and get funded, what the project is. It could be anything. It could be, it could be a little villa, it could be a house, it could be, a small little building where you turn the first level into retail space, the second level into apartments, and then the top level, your own little penthouse suite to live in, with well below market level interest rates. Okay, so they're basically giving you money for free, which as long as you have a viable business plan or repayment, vision, then they will give you this loan. It's a fantastic opportunity. And all you have to do is go to the local municipality, talk to the point person there, say, this is the project I want to do. Does this qualify? And you would have to make sure that the building is built in accordance with certain energy efficiency protocols. But that's pretty much it. So it's a fantastic opportunity that people are definitely taking advantage of. I have a spreadsheet of all the different projects that have been completed through this funding.
Oh, wow.
And it's just any kind of thing you could imagine
So
is on there.
We have a question here. Are there any restrictions on locations for this program? They saw Vila Nova de Gaia in the video, but is Porto and Lisbon included?
It's up to the local municipality. So it has to be considered, the building has to be 30 years old or older, or if it's a younger building, it has to not fall within a certain conservation level criteria. If you see here on the screen, there are certain restrictions. It's meant for urban rehabilitation zones. So buildings that are older, that are derelict, that need to be updated, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that there have been many projects that have taken place in Porto and Lisbon. If you look at the spreadsheet, and if anybody wants that, I can send it to you to see what's been done. There are projects like that. It's just up to the municipality. You have to go and talk to the Câmara or the point person there, and they will tell you if it is or is not acceptable.
But this program is perfect for example, we actually went to see all the towns where my great-grandparents, because I'm third generation. So this is many years ago, we went to, where are they from? And so we went and toured all the towns, right? And one of the towns literally was completely abandoned, and all of the houses there all had for sale signs, but there was nobody around. So you technically could apply to buy that town, if you will. I mean, when I say town, I'm talking like, it's like 10 houses, right? It's a very, very small aldeia, if you will, village. But you could put forth an application to buy all the houses in this village, to say, I'm going to make an artist's colony. I'm going to do or just build housing and, rent it out, or whatever you would want to do. But that would be like a perfect project for something like this, right?
Yeah, essentially. We'd have to, have further discussions about if you could use the funding to purchase the land or the buildings themselves. I think generally this is designed for, say you come in and you purchase that property or those buildings, the town, right? And then you want to rehabilitate.
Oh, I see. Okay. So
the funding is meant for the rehabilitation.
So you have to purchase it first, and then you get the fix it up money from the government.
If you have no skin in the game, I think they're going to want to see that you have some sort of
that makes sense.
Exactly. I think it's different. It depends. If you're like a corporate entity or an LLC, or you have a business in Portugal already and you want to use this funding to do something like that, then I think probably you have some leeway there. But just like somebody coming from the United States and saying, okay, I have a business plan, I want to invest, I'm gonna buy the property, but then I need the funding to rehabilitate it. I think that's what it's ideally geared for. But like they said in the video, it's very loose, the parameters. So this is a fantastic opportunity that nobody knows about in the English speaking world. So I just wanted to put that out there. Right now, this is as of, and this guy right here is Abel Mascarenhas. He's also one of the key point people with this program. 319 financed contracts, almost €1 billion of contracted investment, 634 candidatures, and a potential of 1.5 billion euros to be allocated. So quite a lot going on. But you see, like in places like the Azores, there are only 2 operations there as of June 30th, 2021. Madeira, 15 operations. So it's mainly on the mainland that this is taking place, but it's available to anybody in the whole Portuguese territory. Here's just a beautiful picture of why we call it the Golden Coast, because they've got their own Golden Gate Bridge, and it's just anywhere in Lisbon you have beautiful views. Here's another program specifically for the diaspora. This is called Programa Regressar, and this is designed specifically for Portuguese nationals that have left the country. They were born in Portugal, but they left the country and they want to come back to the country. Let's see. Yeah. I think technically they said it ended in 2020, but kind of like the IFRU program, which said IFRU 2020, it's still going on. So, and I think this one is still going on as well. So it's meant for people that left Portugal, born in Portugal, but left Portugal before 2015. It's really specifically designed, again, for repatriation to the interior of the country. You can receive up to 6,500 euros in support to return to Portugal. The individual and their family, however, must come with an employment contract. So there is an agency that you would go through in their online portal, and you would, where companies post jobs. So you would have a job secured before you return to Portugal. There's something called the IAS in Portugal, called the Indexante do Apoio Social, and that's based on the Portuguese minimum salary. If they do provide travel assistance to return, so they would give you 3 times the IAS, and I think the IAS is like, I don't know, like around 600 euros, something like that. You get a 10 years exemption from Portuguese income tax if you participate in this program. And they also, again, sort of like the PNID program, they offer special lines of credit and fiscal incentives for those seeking to conduct entrepreneurial endeavors. So, either come with a job lined up or have a business plan, basically. I just wanted to give a little, there's so many things that we could talk about, but, and we'll do more in other webinars, but healthcare in Portugal, that's a big thing that people ask a lot about. Here are just some interesting stats that I pulled. In the United States, we have 2 times more obesity than in Portugal. We have 67 times more teen pregnancy than Portugal. In Portugal, they have 43% more physicians per 1,000 people than the United States. So that's a good thing. There are more hospital beds per 1,000 people in Portugal than the US. 44% more affordable healthcare than the United States. The one at the bottom actually is one I really like. United States healthcare system is 5 times more expensive than the Portuguese. So you see, these are just kind of some interesting statistics. Also very strange. I saw this one about deaths of infants, and in the United States, 78 times more prevalent than Portugal. That was just strange to me, so I thought I'd throw it in there, a little crazy trivia. Portuguese healthcare system is definitely what we would consider socialized. They have a lot of self-subsidized healthcare for low income and even foreign residents. They were one of the first countries in the world to reach almost 100% vaccination rate, regardless of what your opinion is about vaccination. They were pretty quick on that. So they have a public healthcare system. They also have private healthcare, which about 20% of the population opts to participate in. But still, the public healthcare system is really great, very low cost. Those that are unemployed or dependent family members or retirees don't need to make contributions to be eligible for healthcare in Portugal. You need to first have a Portuguese social security number and your NIF, which is your tax number. And just to kind of, to summarize it, people don't go bankrupt if they get sick in Portugal. Ambulances are free. So it's a good healthcare system.
So I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I don't know what her family's situation, I don't know how many of them there are, anything, but her family was saying that for the whole family, they do subscribe to a private supplemental insurance, healthcare insurance, for $80 a month. So, I mean, that's pittance compared to what we pay here.
Yeah. It's a good healthcare system.
Mm-hmm. But that's for private insurance, right? You would never get that.
Right. Exactly. So I just kind of want to summarize here the key takeaways. First of all, about Portugal in general, they have an aging population, a low fertility rate. It's a very multicultural environment. When I was in Portugal for 8 months this past year, I had all kinds of friends from Cape Verde, from Angola, from Brazil, from Guinea, South Asia, just an incredible diversity of people in Lisbon. It's really amazing what comes out of that, all the kind of art and food and music, and it just what you have access to on a nightly basis in a city like Lisbon is unlike anything that, maybe in some parts of the United States you would find that kind of culture, but it's just a total melting pot. They have a great education and healthcare system and increasingly educated workforce. Like we said, over 20% of people now hold some form of graduate degree. They're very tech and startup friendly. They're crypto friendly. And then we have the programs that we went over, the PNIDE program for the diaspora specifically, Startup Lisboa for entrepreneurs and startups, which is not only for diaspora, but for anybody. Also the E2020 program for urban rehabilitation of buildings, the Regressar program, if you were born in Portugal and you like to return. So the Portuguese government, as you brought up earlier, Angela, they see this issue, a dwindling population. Their strategy has worked in stoking interest in the country, first through tourism, now through other forms of investment, but they're also realizing, oh man, we need to get our people back here because otherwise there's not going to be a what is Portuguese culture anymore? Once we see this dwindling population in the interior of the country, an aging population as well. And then in one of the slides, I also mentioned 20% of Portuguese nationals reside outside of the country. So that's also a huge factor that we have to take into consideration. 1/5 is elderly, 1/5 is outside of the country. So, so they're making it very appealing to Luso descendants to either invest or return to Portugal. I think in the coming webinars, I'd like to go a little more in depth into things like ecotourism, agricultural investment, more examples of kinds of projects that people already have going on right now in all these different very creative endeavors. These are some pictures of, like some, what would you call them? Like, eco cabins out in national parks where you can go and you can do a retreat. Or
where is that? Do you know?
Oh gosh, I forgot.
I've seen some of these pictures. I think if you just Google ecotourism Portugal, you'll probably find some. But yeah, they're
I think at least one
great.
of these is in Jerez. One of these is in Jerez. And then also, this is something very interesting. Portugal recently, in the past decade, applied. They're in conversations with the UN to expand their nautical borders. Right now, where the gray zone is, that's technically Portuguese, exclusive economic zone, but they want to expand it to where the dotted line is, which would make them one of the largest countries in the world if you take into consideration their nautical territory, which is opens tons of opportunities for somebody that wanted to get involved in these sorts of business endeavors. Just one more 1-minute video to seal the deal. So, as those of us know that have been to places like Lisbon, it's a gorgeous place. And I want to leave off with this quote, which a friend, Gonçalo Souza, in one of the events with Denise that we did, he brought this up, and I love it. It's from Fernando Pessoa. He says, "Nunca me sinto tão portuguesmente eu como quando me sinto diferente de mim. I never feel as Portuguesely myself as when I feel different than myself." And I think that this is like the philosophical core of what we're talking about here. And that is that what it means to be Portuguese is to be different, is to be diverse, is to be multicultural, and is to be inclusive. So that's what Portugal represents right now. When you go and you walk the streets and you see all the different types of people and languages being spoken and projects going on, it's a place for diversity, a place for creativity, a place for expansion and vision. And I think that that goes to the heart of what it really means to be Portuguese. And I think that those of us in the diaspora have a great opportunity to rediscover that and to walk with Portugal into this new future that is coming forth. So with that, obrigado. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joshua. This was amazing. And I know that we have so many people that have already asked about when is this going to be available to watch later. So we'll be providing the links, but clear that there's amazing opportunity in Portugal. So I would encourage everyone out there that if you're thinking about your future and where do you go next, and also thinking about the future of your children and how do you ensure a legacy, you know, there's a lot of things to think about here, a lot of programs to take advantage of. Thank you for your expertise, and thank you for all the research that you've put into this, Joshua. It's such important information that we've been trying to get out to the community, but have just had challenges, whether it's, you know, finding the resource or the language issue or things like that. So looking forward to future presentations. This is a great collaboration. And thank you all those who joined us live and submitted questions. And this is just before the Thanksgiving holiday. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the US. And until next time, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, everybody. And if anybody has questions for me directly, feel free to reach out to me. You can find my contact information on Facebook, text, call, email, whatever. I just love to, you know, share information. So let's talk about Portugal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.